everyone. Welcome back to the Speak Up Erika podcast. And in today's episode, I have my friend Sabriya.
Hi.
Hey, Sabriya. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's like,
Yeah.
the weekend, so I've been chilling.
Yeah.
How's you been?
Yeah, I've been okay. Yeah. Getting by. Doing what we can. Yeah, Sabriya and I met. The I feel like I feel like I should bring up how we met just because it's so
Yeah,
funny.
no, 'cause it brings context. I love it.
Yeah. I don't know if your perspective is different of how we met, but essentially we met through Governor's Ball and
Yeah.
at the water station. And then after that day, we every single summer or every time I'm in New York, we just like message each other and hit
With
each
like
other
the
up. Yeah, and we just hang out, and that's kind of how our friendship began, which is kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't remember what show we even saw together, but I just remember
Like
I don't know
a
why I'm blanking on his name right now.
DJ.
DJ, yes.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know why I'm blinking out right now. I was like, it's something with a J. He somehow I guess ended up talking to you guys, and then I was just there because we like met up for Charlie. I think was this 2017?
Something like that. Yeah.
It had to have been 2017 because I
Yeah.
mean I went in 2016, but Charlie wasn't there in 2016.
No, yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah, you're with a crew, you're rolling deep, so I was like, let me
Yeah.
tag along.
It was yeah, we were like under the influence, and then that's why I started talking to you too, to you and DJ. And we were at that's why we were at the water station, because I was like, I'm just so thirsty right now. So yeah, and I just like I saw you too, and I was like, hey, yo, like what's up?
I love that. No,
Yeah,
and because it's
right?
like I'm usually the person that starts all the conversations and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's so nice. I just had this random, and I was like, yes, you're like me. You just talk.
That's so
And I don't know.
funny.
My thing is like if you meet someone and it's like good vibes and cool vibes, it's
Mhm.
like that's my mentality. Is like, okay, like if I meet you wherever and you're in my city, I was like literally like let's hang out.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to come out here in
I
Toronto.
know it's my turn. It's
You and
my turn.
Kyle, like
Aren't
come
we still
out.
banned? Aren't Americans still
Yeah,
banned?
I think I think people can travel actually, but I think right now there's a lockdown for Canada. So honestly, I
Oh,
don't know anything about the travel restrictions at the moment. I know business people can travel still.
so I gotta pretend I like
I'm here for
own
business.
something basically. No, literally.
But it's not like we can do any like fun activities, I guess, like go to the club or something, as like when Charlene and I were in
Would go to the city.
yeah, when went to New York with you, and you brought us to like all these clubs and stuff, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can't do
Oh,
the
I
same.
totally forgot we did all that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what we did with Matt
We
when you guys came that
happy
time.
hour.
Yes, agave. I remember now. Oh,
Yeah,
those
and
tacos.
we're like, okay, yo, we have to catch our bus, and we're like, yo, the drinks were so strong too. And then even Jackie was like, okay, yo, let's go get some shots because we have to go back to your place to pick up the luggage. And she gave us this whole thing of vodka
I
or something.
remember. Yes.
I was like, what?
Yeah, because we were just like, we don't need this.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone just there's always alcohol in that apartment.
Yeah, yeah. That was a fun time. Oh, so yeah, I guess that's our origin story.
Yeah, that's instead
So
of like a villain story, it's like, oh, friendship story.
I know, so cute. But yeah, it just blows my mind sometimes knowing that you're not even in my city, like you're in New York, and I mean like here in Canada. It's just so crazy that
You're
we're.
in my dream. I mean, I'll talk about this later too, but like you're
Ooh,
in my dream and I forgot to text. It was
okay,
nothing
yeah,
like
tell
super
me.
crazy.
Yeah. Oh, tell me later. Okay.
Yeah, just remind me.
Okay. Um, Sabriya, could you share with us, I guess, a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Sabriya, obviously. I grew up in Vegas, but I moved to New York when I was going to school. And mental health was something that I was always kind of going through, but I never really realized what it was. Especially, I feel like if you come from like an immigrant background, like like my mom has dealt with was like a refugee with like crazy stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so there, it's not like they're like, oh, you have PTSD. Oh, you're anxious. Like, that was just, they lived life and that's how it was.
Exactly.
And then also like, I know you're not supposed to compare struggles, but it's like, at least I feel like on their end, sometimes they look and they're like, well, I went through all this. Like, why are you depressed? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And like sometimes I do get what they're saying, but it's like you can't compare situations. It's like for example, like eating disorders, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like eating disorders are not super prevalent in like um like in more of like poorer countries, just because it's like you're not going to have all that constant media. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you're already kind of struggling with like food and stuff, like I do believe like a lot of these like disorders that kind of come through like nurture versus like nature. Because
Mm-hmm.
like in the US, think for example, I feel like we have a lot of people, um like if I was to compare the US to Ethiopia, I feel like there's definitely more people with like an eating disorder in the US, just because it's like food is more accessible, and
Mm-hmm.
you have all this media on Instagram,
Yeah.
TV, all this stuff talking about, oh, diets, oh, skinny tummy feet tea or whatever it's called,
Yeah,
um
so
all
true.
that stuff, commercials, models, yeah. So it's like versus they're not accessing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going on like a tangent for some reason. Oh yeah, but I guess I was just talking about like your different, how disorders aren't necessarily just from genetics, like there's also kind of like a social component to it.
Agree.
But anyways, yeah, back to when I was younger, like I would have things like I never realized I had anxiety. Like I never realized, like I would just all of a sudden junior year I started having panic attacks and stuff. And it was like really weird. And I wasn't understanding, like now looking back, I'm like, yeah, I was kind of going through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to New York, and that was just like a big change. Cause like, and I feel like a lot of people feel like this, where they're like, I knew me, I didn't really acknowledge my challenges. In my head, I was like, okay, well, I'm only feeling this way, being this way because I'm in like my hometown and I like grew up super strict. And it's like, I don't want to be here. When I go to New York, I'll be happy. And it's like, yeah, I definitely was happy. But I feel like, when you move to another place, like your problems are still going to follow you ultimately. Like, yeah, of course, your surroundings can be negative, but unless you get to the root of the problems, like, you're it's still going to come back to you and haunt you. And then of course it ended up happening when I was in New York. And just I think in New York, it really makes you grow up super quickly. Like I feel like when I was 18, I kind of went through more than a bunch of other people. Like not like I've like, and I've had this conversation with my friends. It's like if you go to school in the city, like I don't know, it just because you're always grinding, you're always like trying to do an internship, trying to like do a job, or like you're in school, and it's like all those things also can affect your like mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I guess we can just kind of, that was kind of like a big long thing, but like,
Yeah.
you know,
I love it though.
basically I grew up with like issues, didn't realize it, moved to New York, realizing I was having these issues, and these issues are real. And ever since then, it's just me trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. Thanks, Sabriya. No, like
Yeah.
I feel like growing up and like you talking about that moving to a different place might make you feel happier, which you said it did in the short term. And sometimes I think about like, dang, like I hate being at home, I hate this and that, like maybe if I move out, maybe if I have a job, maybe if I have a salary or something, then
Right.
I'll be happier. Will I be happier then? But at the end of the day, it's like you have to really battle what's inside before you can actually
For
truly be
sure.
happy. Yeah, I love that though. And like kudos to you on realizing it, right?
I'm still trying to work
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, for real.
It's
Yeah, I feel
all a
that.
work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. Um, no, but thanks for sharing your like your journey, I guess. Like well, like the beginning of your journey
Yeah.
where you are
That
now.
was just a more condensed version of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess like going off of that, I wanted to just bring up that our topic that we're going to be sharing today is about mental health, of course. And Sabriya also shared on her social media before that we both wanted to talk about, which was about that gray area, which
Hmm.
I'll ask you to bring it up. And then also that like Black people being overlooked in terms of mental health as well in their own trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe talking about that gray area. Would you want to start there or
Yeah, for
yeah?
sure. So I've never really been a type of person to talk about my I guess I just never really talk, like I don't hide it, but I've never on social media actually shared some of my struggles or like what I was going through. Like it's funny, like my roommate, like I don't know how it came up, but I was like talking to someone, I was like, yeah, I take this stuff for bipolar, and she looks at me, she's like, wait, you're bipolar? And I'm like, I was like, you've been my friend for years. Yeah. It's like, what? So even though I feel like I'm open about it, I guess I realized like, no, so I guess I don't really actively share that much, but if it comes up, I'll like tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like the whole thing with quarantine, even you've inspired me. Like I see everyone kind of going after doing their own side projects and stuff. And for me, I was just kind of like, well, also I was kind of going through a whole breakdown like earlier this year. um, but the quarantine in itself has kind of taught me like, okay, maybe I should try to write more. Maybe I should try to do all the things that I said I wanted to do, but because of work or whatever, I always said I was too tired or like exhausted or just didn't have any confidence in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity came up in May. I wrote like May, because it was Mental Health Awareness Month, but it was kind of going into June. And that was kind of like the whole, like around that time was like a big uprising with like the Black Lives Matter
Yes.
movement with a lot of the protests. But I posted that gray area in September, I think.
I
You
think,
have to remind me. I don't know.
yeah, October.
I was like, I don't remember when okay, October. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because that was Suicide Awareness Month. There we go. Yeah, it was Suicide Awareness Month. And I've noticed in all these suicide conversations, they don't talk, like it's always focused on those who have completed their suicide attempt, or kind of like more of the whole like before part where it's um kind of like, okay guys, like call this hotline if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just very generic.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's not that conversation of those who have attempted suicide and then
Mm-hmm.
they're like still alive, and then you're just trying to figure out like, okay, well, how do I move on from this? Like what am I supposed to do? And
Yeah.
to me, that is what the gray area is.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
just wanted to share some of my experiences and some of the experiences of my friends who've um kind of been at that point, and then it's just because like you're at like, if you've attempted suicide, you're at risk to reattempt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was also kind of like sharing, like explaining resources to not only people who are like in those positions, but also for their like loved ones. And
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly, I had people like reach out and were like, thank you for this. Like I would have never understood. Um,
Exactly.
so yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think also part of that gray area you wrote in that post was the fear of getting help and like how to build yourself up from those suicide attempts, and
Mm-hmm.
things that like friends and things that friends can say, do, or ask you, and like reminders for your journey was also what you brought up. And even like going back to the laws that protect people and like school and work, that there's just so many things that are
Oh,
intertwined
right.
with
Yeah.
whatever's going on that you're just like, oh my gosh, like what do I do about school, or what do I do about work, or
Yeah.
like,
And no one talks about that.
yeah, and the
And that's the
short-term
more like scary
disability
part.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sabriya, for talking about that. But I think in that post as well, you brought up support and like things that your friends can say, things that people can ask you and stuff. Can you kind of just talk more about that? Because I feel like if someone in our life is going through something, we kind of struggle to find the right things to say, or struggle to find ways to support them that's like appropriate, and making sure we're not like overstepping something,
Yeah, for
you know?
sure.
Yeah.
And I think boundaries is definitely something that's so important. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, and like I think it's like the worst, like with people who have zero interaction, zero experience. Like I've had situations where I literally had a panic attack, and like I had a roommate that just stood there, and it's like I can't
Oh,
blame her, because it's like
yeah.
if you don't like,
Know
if
what
you
to
something you've
do.
never seen before, you're kind of just like, what? And you just don't know what to do, and it's like,
Yeah.
I think that's just educate mental health education, or lack thereof, I should say. And
Yeah,
um
100%.
because you know, some people literally get awkward when someone's crying. Imagine someone like having a panic attack. Like some people get awkward crying. Like some people would just get freaked even more out by saying something like
For sure,
that.
yeah.
but for those who are kind of like over that little hump, I think the number one thing is just to tell them that you support them and like ask them if there's anything that you can do specifically. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, sometimes it's just even like the little things of maybe you didn't straight up ask, but like for example, like maybe they got you your favorite candy bar. And that would bring like that, I know for me, like if that happened, that would actually kind of put a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And I think also language is so important. So
Yeah, you brought that one
like
up.
a lot of the cliche is like, oh, it gets better. It's like it just sounds so dismissive. Or I'm trying to think one of the other ones.
You wrote, you'll get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like you're
And
stronger
versus
than
like,
this.
yeah, no, that's the one that pisses me off the most, I feel like. Because it's like strength has nothing to do with this. This is a fuck yes. Well, yeah, you said I could cuss. This is a fucking
Yeah.
disease.
Yeah.
This is a fucking disease, man. And I think the worst part is it's lifelong. Like,
Mhm.
and recovery is not linear. It has
Yes.
its ups and downs. And it sounds like I'm never like I have bipolar, like that's never gonna go away. There's no way I can like put that into remission. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just what it is. And I can try and find different ways to manage it. But there's some where like some people, and like I think that's another distinction also, is like you have people that are depressed and like, and then you have clinical depression, or like you
Mm-hmm.
can have anxiety, but then you have like clinical like general anxiety disorder. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's also kind of like another distinction.
Mm-hmm.
But
Would
that doesn't
you?
still diminish what the person that's not like a clinical, like, you know, it still doesn't diminish what they experience. But
Yes.
some people though, like they'll have one depressive episode and then they're good, you know, versus some people it's chronic, like multiple attempts, or they're just like stuck in bed and like they're just they can't function. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the true thing. When you're not being able to function in your day-to-day life, that's how, you know, like, okay, this is making like a major impact on me.
Yes. Yeah. And then at that point, that's when you would classify it as a disorder.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
totally advocate for people. I know people are like, don't stay away from Google, yada yada. But it's like if you don't have any resource, like if you don't have the money, and
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I mean, of course, it's easy to get sensationalized and be like, I mean, because I've definitely been there where it's like, I'll have like, I don't know, my arm will be numb, and I'm like, oh my God, it's this. And it's like, no, but if,
Right.
but they have so many kind of like self-diagnostic tools. And if you like see, like, I remember I would always go on Reddit. Like, I just was so fascinated reading about other people's stories. And there's so many people just share their stories, and it's just so helpful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like, or like they have like these random tests they could just take online, and you could see like, oh, are these your symptoms?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can match up, um it could kind of like help you like bring awareness to yourself in a
Mm-hmm.
way.
Would you be able, if you're comfortable, to share about your diagnosis with bipolar?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I always have to laugh because
Love it, Sabriya. I love it.
I always know for real, I always have to laugh because it's just like, it's just like, why, like, I mean, I know why I was never diagnosed sooner. But I went through like this really rough period of time, this beginning of 2017. Like I was just like constantly, and this is like pre-diagnosis. I was just like constantly crying. Like I would, and I would spend most of my days at work and like versus home or school. So it's like embarrassing because I'm literally like just sobbing at work.
Mm.
Any moment of chance. And then it kind of got to a point going to like later in the fall where I feel like I was definitely kind of like more like manic in a way, because I was just so, I was very angry and I was just like lashing, like I would like cuss out customers. Like I was
Oh.
like, yeah, like it was bad. Like I would have ran, like I remember I asked this person to put like this on a shelf because I was too short, and they're like, why can't you do it? Or like, that's your job, like something like little like that. And I went into a whole panic attack. Like
Oh,
normally that
shoot.
wouldn't, like that shouldn't cause anything, you know, like, if anything
Mhm.
it's a kind of bitchy remark and you're like, okay. But for some reason I went into like a whole panic attack over it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then it was just kind of like, it was getting like real bad. And I remember there was this one time I had this one manager pull me aside and talk to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And he was like, just because I say to cry so many times. And he was just really sweet and was just like talking to me, just basically being like, hey, I'm here for you.
Mhm.
And then I
Oh.
had this other manager that was like, oh, like, do you go to therapy? And I'm like, no. And like, she was like really supportive. And she was like, oh, hey, like, use EAP, which stands for Employee Assistance Program. And
Mm,
essentially not all companies, like I feel like a lot of the big companies have this, but essentially it's through your insurance plan. And you even technically like don't really need insurance because they give you free sessions. And it's kind of annoying because this is like out of network. And I'm also speaking from like an American perspective.
I was gonna ask,
I was like, this is like a disclaimer.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they might have that in Canada too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, I know we have. You talked about short-term disability, which I'll let you finish, but yeah, we have that one here. So I'm assuming if that one is one of our support things. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but go ahead, Sabriya. The employee assistance program.
So you call them and then you're just like, hey, like I need a therapist, and then they just link you up with whoever.
Oh wow.
I think you get. I mean, but like once again, like I said, it's kind of annoying because I was like out of network, so it's just
what
like.
Does that mean?
Okay, so yeah, so for insurance plans, like your insurance has contractors with different doctors. Okay. So basically they're like, okay, you can, if you only want to pay, like my copay was like $40.
Right.
So if I want to pay $40 for every visit, then that person has to be in network with my insurance.
Right.
Like in part of their database. Okay. Versus let's say like it's someone that's not partnered with my insurance, I'm gonna have to pay like $300.
Oh wow. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So and it sucked because I would connect to some of these therapists. Some of my best therapists were through EAP, but I just couldn't afford them. So I would have like 2-3 sessions with them. Yeah. And then nothing. But like something was better than nothing. And then I was just kind of like explaining my situation to her. I don't know, I'm big on her name. She's cool. And yeah, and then I think that's kind of like when it was first starting to come up. That was like starting kind of like in the fall. I would say maybe like October. Oh, I remember vividly. Hold on. Yeah. So I was already kind of going through stuff, but like I never did EAP until like beginning of November. Or because I just remembered I kind of had like a meltdown. Like I was in Reno with my friends, and then I guess I'll just say it. I took a pill, and I expected to like dance and stuff. And I have like this vivid memory of people saying like, oh, like she's smiling, like it's hitting her. And then my next memory is I'm on the ground sobbing because it just like unlocked everything that I like. And like people have talked, like that's why they have like MDMA therapy and stuff like that. How like just so like a bunch of things that I've repressed and never thought about like just all came rushing back at me, and that just kind of really fucked me up, where I'm like, oh my god. I was like, so it's kind of like I kind of found kind of the reason what may have like contributed, because obviously genetics, like I didn't win the genetic lottery, but also all those external factors definitely played a part. And I'm honest, even though I was like sobbing, like I'm honestly so grateful for that experience, because it kind of forced me kind of like to go into therapy and like work through these issues and like, and yeah, but I still wasn't diagnosed. And then I just kind of went through like a bunch of random doctors here and there. Like it was just unorganized. And then once again, talking about running away. So I remembered I like called out of work. Like I like sent an email on like Friday. I was like, I'm not coming in for my next 4 shifts. And like, I didn't. And that's not okay, obviously. Which is why I started talking about like work and stuff. Yeah. And then, cause I was like, okay, I'm going to go back home. Like, I'm going to be happy. Like, I'm going to see home in Vegas. Yeah. And then I was like planning a trip to LA. I was going to see Britney Spears, and you know how much I love her. Yeah. But no, like it wasn't really like that. Like I was in LA, I was kind of like cheery in a way, but it's like I was still like really, really sad. And then like on my way back to like from LA, I went straight to Britney. I don't have any recollection of that show. Like I generally was like kind of like in a dissociative. I was just not there. Like I don't even have videos of me like singing. Like I went through my Snapchat, and there's like only 10-second videos of shows. Like I just really was not like there, and like I have to live through those videos. That's all I have now. And then I just remembered like I had made plans with so many people, and I just like like, I just felt the need to lie. And I feel like that's another thing to do. Like, I feel like, I mean, I think now as a culture, we're starting to understand where you can just say like, hey, like, I'm not in a good mood, or like,
Yes.
hey, honestly, like, I'm really depressed. But like, I would make up some lie, and I was just like, oh, like, I'm sick, or like, oh, I'm like busy. And it's like, no, I'm just depressed. And yeah, so then it was my flight back from Vegas to New York. And even though I was still kind of like miserable in Vegas, in my head, New York just seemed worse. Because it's like, for me, it was like, okay, this was a getaway. Like, you got to get, just like with Reno, I was like, I got to do a quick getaway from like my shitty life in New York, or just the shitty situation that I was in. And then when I was in the airport, I just had like this impulsive like reaction where I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna take a bunch of like pills, and then I'm gonna like on the flight, like before the flight, on the flight, and then I'll like be dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just sounds so fucking irrational, but I was like, okay, this is the plan.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then I landed legit at JFK. Like, I woke up 20 minutes before landing at JFK, and I was like, oh. I have to laugh. I know this is gonna laughing matter, but it's like on the outside looking in, it's like, what was I thinking? It's like, I remember when I was younger, like when I was like 16, technically I was like, I forgot that it even happened. I remember like I tried stabbing myself in the stomach, and I just have to laugh because it's hard. Like, it's not easy. Like, I was just having all these like irrational delusions, and it's just like, what was I getting at? Yeah, I don't know. So it just makes me laugh because a lot of, at least when I'm in that state, I'm just doing a bunch of ridiculous shit, and it's like, that doesn't even make sense. But anyways, I started feeling really, really sick. I just took a bunch of Tylenols. I mean, they're like the extra strength. I didn't even keep track of how many. But yeah, I started getting really sick. So I just went straight to the hospital. And I never realized this, but Tylenol fucks up your liver. I don't recall. I don't know the reasoning.
Yeah.
But so before I could even like check in or whatever, they had to like put charcoal in my system.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, once again, this is the whole in network, out of network thing. I wanted to check in and just be there. Cause like I knew ultimately like I needed medication. Like, I just kind of knew at that point. I was like, I was on like a waiting list from some other hospital, and like it just wasn't none of it was just working. Just nothing was working. Actually, side note, let me just reverse all the way back pre-attempt. And because it really pisses me off, and I can't wait. Like, maybe this sounds like I'm like bitter, but it's like I really do feel like this person has not learned their lesson. This person has not apologized to me once. And this is also connected to like another workplace thing. So like I have like we had multiple managers, but I had one direct manager who's supposed to like manage my career, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember I would just always get so uncomfortable with him, and just because he was just like, he would try, like we had to hit certain metrics, and like there was one metric was essentially customer service, and it's like mine would always be 100. Like, people would always fuck with me and like me.
Yeah.
And then there's like other boring stuff that's like, oh, how many X did you sell? You know, like the more numbers relation. And he keeps telling me like, oh, well, people like you. You just gotta use them liking you to sell the stuff. And it's like, I don't know, just the way he kept explaining it to me, it just wasn't, it wasn't clicking. And also that was like that fall was like, I started a new job. I started an internship that took like, I did crazy hours. Like, I would get there like 9, and I lived super far. So it'd be like a 40-minute commute. And then I would leave at like 7. No, like I would eat lunch, but I'd eat lunch at the desk. And then I was still in school. It was like, so, and like new apartment. So I was just dealing with a bunch of new changes at once. And that definitely didn't help. Sorry, I'm also going back in time. This is like 26. I should have done like a little timeline. But anyways, but like going back to that November of 2017. So that's just to show you that like, I feel like even those moments I was kind of going through it, but I never put a name to it. I never realized, like, you know how we're talking about normal?
Yeah.
Like, I remember my internship, we had a broken elevator, and every day I would just kind of stand in front of it. And like, I was like, should I just jump? And it's like, that's not normal. Like, but you just, those thoughts do happen sometimes.
Yes.
And yeah, anyways, I just remembered there is one time where I did kind of like go off, but at a customer, but it was low-key also like, obviously I take responsibility on my part, but it's like I was like holding it together so good, just because I knew like in the back of my mind I was kind of like on thin ice in a way. Like, I don't know, I just got like this weird vibe. And I just really wanted to get through the day because I was so anxious the entire day, but I was like, okay, like I have a half an hour left on my shift. Like I got this. This person comes in, they want to pick up their order. And I look at their ID and it doesn't match the order. So essentially I'm following regulation and he's getting incredibly hostile. He just starts cussing at me and I'm like trying to like de-escalate the situation and trying to be like, hey, like I'm not having like a great day right now. Like, you know, I really did not want to flip out. And then he was like, I don't give a shit that you're having a bad day every time I come in here and yada, yada, yada. And then from there, I was like, okay, let me remove myself from the situation. So I turned around and I helped another customer. Like I'm honestly, I was really trying my best. And I'm trying to like help these other customers. And he's still behind me. And I just hear him. He just keeps spewing all this sort of stuff. And it just like, I snapped. I just had to have snapped. And then I remember like my manager, like, they're like, let's go take a quick break. And then when I came back to talk to him, he was like, oh, sorry, I'm going like a whole tangent, but I feel like this is kind of very important. And he basically was like, oh, like, what are you doing to help yourself? Like EAP. I was like, yeah, like, I already got started on that. I'm seeing a therapist. And he was like, okay, well, what else do you need? And I'm like really confused. I'm like, what? And he was like, what else? Like, what else do you need? And I felt like, mind you, like, I don't really know anything about like mental health and all this sort of stuff. Like, I didn't even know officially like what I was. And he basically was implying medication. And he gave me this link to the hospital. Like, he just sent me this address to this hospital and was like, oh, like, my wife's been here before. And I know a couple of other people that's been here before, telling me like I could get medication there. And he said this, and I guess in hindsight, like I would have understood in a way, but like then I was already like in a messed up state that like he said, oh, like make sure you tell someone before you go because they make you turn off your phone. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, doctors' offices always say like no cell phones, like turn them off, like silent. So I didn't think much of it because that was just how I was viewing it. And I remembered I went in and I felt threatened. Like I felt like if I didn't go follow this advice, that it would come back and bite me on the ass and being like, oh, well, we gave our worker like suggestions and she didn't take them, you know? So I just felt pressured to do that. And so I went up there and I'm like talking to the person and I'm like, I literally just walk in and I'm like, hey, like I kind of had a meltdown at work. My manager told me I could come here to get some medication. And I'm talking like this, like how I'm talking to you, I was talking to them. So I was fine. And then, and I was like, oh, can I use the restroom? And then they're like, oh, we'll take your vitals. And then they're like, yeah, this guy will escort you. But it wasn't to the damn restroom. It was to like the EI psych ward. So he sent me to a psych ward without telling me that's what it actually was. And it was just fucking traumatizing, dude, because it's like, I have no idea where I'm going. And there was like this like man that was just very aggressive and stuff. He was like coming towards me and there was like cops in there. It just was like, it just really caught me off guard. They made me take off all my clothes. They went through all my shit. Like I couldn't even have my socks on, and I hate I sound like a press, but it's like I hate my feet on bare floor.
That's
so
fair.
like that, yeah, I don't know, that just made me really upset. And then I went in, the doctor comes in and was like, are you like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh, well, this happened at work. And then he was like, well, like, what do you want to do? I was like, what do you mean? He was like, do you want to stay the night? I was like, no, I don't want to stay the night. I didn't even want to be here. I just thought I could come get medication. That's when they explained to me that like they don't usually do that at the ER, but then they still gave me like a prescription. And then they, you know, like those doctors, they're like, oh, you don't have to go to work. And then I got one of those notes. And then they set me up with a social worker there. To help me find like next plans for like medication management and stuff. But yeah, so that kind of goes back to the point where it's like, I was not a risk to myself or to others. I should have never been put in that position at all. And that's also another boundary. Like, who are you to tell me that I need medication and that's what I'm missing? It's like, you're not a doctor. Like what? Even when I talk to like friends or people who are going through things, I'm like, listen, like everyone has like a different road and a different treatment plan. If one thing doesn't work, then try another. But I would never go to a person and be like, you need medication. Like, but I'd be like, hey, like this might help in addition to therapy. Or you could do this, but it's like a scientific thing. I can go like in a whole world. And then the nice part with the social work is that she validated me. Like, because I definitely spoke out about this to HR and like basically nothing happened. but before that, just talking to her just made me realize, like, okay, like I'm not crazy. Like this was wrong. This shouldn't have happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I never got an apology, never got any of that. Like I had to switch direct managers, like it was a whole mess. But anyway, so that also contributed a big chunk. Because remember, that was like November, and then December is like when I went back home. So that was like was like another additional moment. And I remember I texted once and was like, hey, like I have a therapy appointment. Is it okay if I can leave a bit early? And then he just left me on red. And I'm like, this
Mm-hmm.
is your job.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm, because you know they make it seem like I have to whore out my personal life, and I feel like that when I had other jobs where it's like I have to spew all these things just to get like an inch of like sympathy or understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, yeah. So then that was like still part of fall 2017, January 2018. I come back. The hospital I was first at that like liquidated my stomach was like, oh, your insurance, we accept you for medical, but not for like psychiatric help. You have to go to a different hospital. So then I went to like a different hospital, and kind of like going back, we talked about like informal, voluntary, involuntary. I was considered
Right. Yeah.
voluntary
Mm-hmm.
because I went in and checked that I basically like I knew like at that point that's when I knew like I was like okay, like I haven't tried medication. I was like, let me try medication that I took when I saw um when I was at the ER in the fall. They gave me some like it just didn't work, and that's like another thing. So like you can go to a place, but like if they don't actually like know the details, like they just knew I was like anxious and panic stuff, so they just gave me whatever, but it's like it doesn't work. So that's like a whole also another conversation. But yeah, so I got in there, and they said they wanted me to stay for like a week, and then I was just like okay. But if I didn't want to, technically after 72 hours, I could like petition to a court to try to leave. But at that point, I was just like, I also needed a break, honestly. Like, it was like the one,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't really a break. Like, I remember I like was still focused on like writing scholarship essays and
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was, or like internship applications. I remember I begged for my phone because I was like, I need to pay off my credit card. Like, so technically it wasn't really a rest, but it kind of like gave me kind of a break from the real world in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I was just in a different environment. And from there, that's basically when I got like my bipolar one
Diagnosis.
diagnosis. Yeah. And then anxiety. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently panic disorders suffer from anxiety disorder technically, but it's like whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. So like for example, like I haven't had a panic disorder, like who knows what. So technically I don't have panic disorder technically right now because I
yeah.
haven't had a
Mm-hmm.
panic attack in like so long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yay! Yeah, that's
Right.
awesome.
And yeah, and then from there it's just been ups and downs of different therapists and different psychiatrists. Like I like to make this joke where it's like I ghost all my therapists, but then all my psychiatrists like dump me. Yeah, and that's like also like a whole other thing. But yeah, I think that's like the whole kind of story.
No, thank you, Sabriya. I think like you're so brave of what you had to go through, and I just applaud
Um,
you, and I'm thankful that you were able to share that story with me because I can't even imagine how hard it was of like what you went through, but I'm so proud because like you're here right now and you're able to share it,
yeah,
laugh through it, and just like learn about
you
who you
have
are
to
and stuff.
laugh
Like
through
I just
it.
yeah, thank you. It's man, that manager story though really pissed me off.
I will never like, and it's frustrating because a lot of people would be like, "Oh, get over it," and it's like, no, you don't
No.
understand. Like that was
Yeah.
traumatic. Like people don't get it. Like that. Like
No.
if I'm still talking, this happened what 2017. We're in 2021. Like if the fact that I'm still talking
Mhm.
about it means it really truly fucked me up. Like
Yeah.
I like that's why I have. I mean, I already low-key had trust issues before, but now I extremely have trust issues with um like management and authority and stuff like that. Cause you
Mhm.
know, and that's like going back to the whole workplace family thing where it's like, oh, you can come talk to us for whatever, yada yada. And it's like, no. And like
Mhm.
that's another like thing about work is like I know some people who literally did not get promoted because of their mental or even physical health. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that's really shitty. And I forgot what I was trying to get off. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel like a lot of what you talked about though was from also like that Instagram post that you put that's like talking about work and the resources and talking about like um in that other post when you wrote about unsolicited giving unsolicited advice. and like, oh, you should get off your meds, or you should take these meds, or you should do this, when like they're not even a doctor. Like, why?
No, literally. It's
Like,
like
you know.
what? And that's what I
Yeah.
feel so defensive. Like, yeah, obviously I'm not defending everything that Kanye does. But it's like, you don't know, like, unless you know what that person's like, you've been in that condition, like, you have no
Yes.
right, really. I mean, even if
Yes.
you've been in that condition, you still don't have a right. But my thing is like, you're coming from a complete outsider perspective. You have no idea. And this also comes to like with Britney Spears. Britney Spears is now playing on Hulu. Just have to plug. But like, no, and like because she's also another example where people would just call her crazy and just say all these like negative stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I kind of like related to her, because it's just like, when you just, there's just so many, like, a lot of people honestly just trying to use you, or they just don't understand, and they just trying to make you feel like shit, or make you feel like you're a horrible person. And it's like, no, you're just going through a really rough time. I don't know, people just love to just plaster their opinions.
Yep. Yeah, on
And they're
opinions that
harmful, and they don't, even if they think they're helping, it's like, no, you're being harmful.
yeah, exactly. So Sabriya, I know in your other posts, you also talked about how racism isn't a mental illness. Can you kind of touch upon that as well?
Yeah, so I know earlier I kind of talked about how if you're part of like an immigrant, or particularly like
Yeah.
Black, your, your family is just not going to get it. So that's already kind of like a strike one. And it wasn't until kind of like around June, like during the Black Lives Matter, that it kind of hit me, like, all the stuff you see on the news, like every time there's a shooting, every time there's like an arrest and like a death, like that is traumatic. Like that takes a toll on your mental health.
Yeah.
Um, and that's also something that's unique to the Black experience. So a lot of people wouldn't think like, oh, it's like nothing, but it's like when you see someone that looks like you constantly in these situations, um, it just only like contributes to whatever you're also kind of going through. Because even if you don't have any sort of like mental disorder, seeing that is still gonna mess you up. And just in mental health, like Black people typically get overlooked, and they don't get we're not allowed to acknowledge our feelings, like, especially like the stereotype was like with black men specifically, it's like, okay, you can't cry, you're not supposed to cry, blah blah blah. And then with like Black women, like if we get loud or try to defend ourselves or speak up, then it's like, oh, she's the angry Black woman. And it just, I don't know, it just doesn't get taken into account. And the fact that there's not even a lot of Black therapists there, it's like just not like, that wouldn't even be helpful, because there's some, honestly, therapists are still people at the end of the day, and you still have, people are racist. People are just not, even if they're not like, they're not saying the N-word, it doesn't mean like the certain things they'll say aren't I can't think from the top of my head, but like covert racism things, and where they just kind of start dismissing the person. And it's like, people sometimes end up going to see a therapist, and then they get more hurt than good because of how shitty the therapist is, and then that discourages them from even going to find someone. Yeah. And also like sometimes like a Black therapist or Black psychiatrist will understand from the, not only the background, but like your certain experiences that you face as like a Black woman or Black man or Black they or non-binary. I don't know, I said Black they, non-binary person. Yeah. And that kind of correlates to like kind of like the barriers. It's like based on kind of like the structure of like America, I will say, in terms of like wealth and equity, typically kind of goes towards like the white people, specifically also like white males. Like I don't know the specific numbers right now, but like technically, like if I remember, there would be so many averages where it's like, oh, okay, women make this amount of sense less than a man, and then when it comes to minority women, it keeps getting lower. Also location, and at this point, this could kind of apply to everyone. If you're in the rural Alabama, like how are you gonna get a therapist in the middle of nowhere? And like, I mean, I'm in New York City, so that's great because there's so many free resources out there, just because it's such a huge city, and there's so many hospitals and so many like organizations. And even for me, like some people also, they don't have insurance. There is state insurance. I don't know much about that, honestly. But even with like my own regular insurance, I would try to call people. So it's like you're taking the time out to research, you're taking the time out to call. I remember I was like calling so many people, like I would either like not get a call back, or I would get a call back telling me that they're full.
Mm,
Uh, yeah. And like that's also another thing. People think therapy is like one big shot, and it's like no, there's different types of therapies. You have cognitive behavioral therapy, you have dialectic behavioral therapy, you have family, like internal family systems therapy, and then you have like things like
gr-
EMDR,
group
I move,
therapy.
group
Yeah.
therapy, and they even
Mm-hmm.
have like support groups that are like where you just kind
Mm-hmm.
of go and talk. um and that's like another thing. And then of course like price. So like
Mm-hmm.
back to the whole like in network, out of network thing. um and you could also, I found this out a bit too late, but you can petition to your insurance company if there's someone that you want out of network. You can petition to like get them in and like, I don't
Oh,
know, make your case.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I found out through my friend, and it was already too late when I found out
Right.
that's what she did, but it's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I just lost my insurance. And even when I did, I just did not have a good therapist. It was just like, it just felt like whack. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain it. And it's like, because my whole thing is, I like when a therapist, I mean, I guess everyone has a different approach, but I like it when they ask me. And I feel like with a lot of people, it's hard to just start opening up, and it's hard to
Right.
start talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's kind of like the therapist's job to kind of like probe a little bit, or like be like, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? It's like, oh, I can't think of anything. Then they could just start asking little questions, and that can help
To
getting
get, yeah,
the
that
response.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what other barriers. Yeah, and just like financials, like medication costs money. I don't remember the exact number I put in my post of how
Uh,
much I spend
three
every, like
hundred
it's
over
definitely,
300 a month,
I was
I
gonna say,
think.
yeah, over
Yeah.
300 a month with just my mental health. That's not even including
Yeah.
like if I go to physical therapy, if I go to any other regular doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
Um, and that's like when you think, that's insane. Like that could be money put into savings, like, but it's like that's what I have to do to function. And not just me, but like multiple people, like that's what they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's like, because I know from my experience, like I don't want to be on medication forever. Like I really don't. Um, but like I've just noticed the times that I'm not, they just haven't ended well for me. And sometimes, and it's not like purposely I'll go off. It's just like I would forget, or I would just like be, I mean, yeah, not gonna lie. There is that one point where I was like, oh, okay, I'm
Fine with
doing
that.
yoga now.
Oh,
I'm doing yoga. I don't need to do this. um, but yeah, I don't know. I think the least you could do is just try. There's so many new things. Like now you can do like online therapy,
yes. Yeah.
like BetterHelp. I don't know if they have BetterHelp in Canada, but in the US,
Mm-hmm.
essentially it's like, I think it's like 180 a month, and that kind of roughly breaks down to like $40 to $50 per week for like a session.
Right. Okay.
And which is kind
Yeah.
of like normal. Like for me, like with insurance, my copay is $40, so it's about like 5 or 10 more dollars than like if you were to do something with insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they don't require insurance. You can like write a journal entry and like unlimited journal entries, and like for your therapist to read, but then you get like 1 30-minute session a week.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
And that's also another thing you need to look into. See, like, okay, are they 45 minutes? Are they an hour? Are they only 30 minutes? Like when I found out they did 30 minutes, I was like, I could never. I need the whole hour. Like I always make this joke where I was like I think I made this joke to like my therapist. I was like, oh, I wish I could just book you like for a month straight, and just so we can get all of this out, and like we'll fix, like not fix me, but I'm like, okay, let's figure this all out now. Like let me book
Yes.
you. Um, but
Personal
my train of
therapist.
thought. No, literally, yeah, fuck a personal assistant. I need a personal therapist dedicated to me. Yeah, and there's so many other things, but like just because I think also COVID, that's also another restriction. But
Oh
telehealth
yeah.
now, it's like, but that also can help, because now technically they're kind of able to take more clients because it's all just face to face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, dang. Thank you so much, Sabriya. I feel like people don't realize that there's so many barriers to mental health, like
Yeah.
to getting therapy. And thank you for like sharing all about these barriers, because it's something I feel like if maybe you're not experiencing mental health disorders, or sorry, mental disorders, or like troubles in your own headspace, that to really think about what the people around you are going through and the struggles that they're going through, and just to be like compassionate for them and show that empathy,
compassion is a
right? Like
big
at the
thing.
end of the
And
day, right? Yeah, no, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, you just triggered another one of the things, compassion. And I remembered,
Mm-hmm.
like, when I was getting discharged from the hospital, she like wrote two things on a paper. I don't remember one of them,
Yeah.
but the other one was like compassion. The only reason why that stuck with me, seems like every therapist keeps telling that to me, and it's like, damn, I haven't learned this yet, huh? And kind of like going back to when, when you're leaving that gray space and you're trying to, like, in that recovery stage, try to figure out, or even before, I think a lot of times people can self-deprecate and talk shit to themselves and like be negative to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my head, I'm just like, I think it's, if you're that person, take a step back and look, like, would you say these things to your friend? And if the answer is
Mm-hmm.
no, it's like, why would you say these things to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And then that really hit me, and I was like, that's
Yes.
true. Like, talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend, and hopefully you're not an asshole. And
Yeah.
not like, you don't talk to your friends like you're an asshole. Yeah, that was just one thing I did kind of like think is like important to mention. It's like, give yourself breaks. Like, anytime you do something little, like getting up and taking a shower, or like
Yes.
cleaning your room. And that's also
Yeah.
another thing, like the way friends could help you. Like, I've had friends help me clean my room.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even though that seems like nothing, like that helped tremendously. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just because I felt like I was lost, and I didn't know what to do. Like, I just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So like friends like that are able to kind of like help you out with like little things, like that may not seem major, but it's like that actually will go a long way.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
I
because I've
think,
seen.
oh no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
continue. No, I was just saying, like, I remember seeing this video on Twitter. I think she posted originally on TikTok, and everyone was just roasting her because I guess her room was so disgusting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah, and
I
then
know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think she said like she only picked up like a couple of things, and people were like going in, and it's like, you don't like. And I
Know
remember
what
I
they're
had this
going through.
conversation with my friend. She took like a before and after picture, and it's like, when you don't give shit about your own life, it's like, you don't think about picking up the clothes or like picking up the food, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And also,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another thing is like, when you're going through these, not everyone's going to have the same symptoms, and not everyone's going to experience symptoms the same way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's ultimately it's a personal journey.
Yeah.
There's things
Oh
people
yeah.
you could share and relate to with one another, but ultimately your story is your story. Your journey is your journey.
Yeah.
And it's just important to have good people surrounding you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you
Mm-hmm.
can't afford, therapy, meds, whatever, like a good support system is free 99. That's the thing. It's free 99.
Yes, agreed. 100%. Like having that support system. And I feel like um people who don't have a good support system, or they feel like when they're like stuck at home, say for example, and like maybe their parents aren't saying like or their parents are just being parents, and just saying like these
Right.
things or something like that. Like they there's a lot of resources online now, and I feel like a lot of support groups online that they can find and build that support system for them.
Yeah,
I know
build your
people
own.
like
Yeah,
use Facebook groups, and people now, like a
that's
lot
a
of
big
people on
one.
Instagram are like posting and sharing about their mental disorders and just sharing their journeys and experience. I feel like if you're having trouble finding a safe space, that you can go online to maybe find that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And people can always talk to me. I don't
Yeah.
care. I
Sabria, if
don't
you can
care.
send your
My
Instagram or how
Instagram.
to connect you to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I think I mentioned this earlier, like when how we met. Like, I'm just a chatterbox. I talk to
Yeah.
anyone. But if anyone has more questions, or if they just need to vent or whatever, like, I'm there. Like, I don't know, I just feel like that's the one thing I'm good about. Like, I'm good at talking, I'm good about caring about people. So it's just like, it doesn't matter if I don't know you, because eventually you'll be my friend.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Like
But
us.
yeah, no, yeah. But it's like, and I'll send it, but it's like at
Yeah.
Sabriya.
Yeah. I'll link it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be linking some sources, the resources that you shared about in this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. I just wanted to
Also,
say,
real quick, I do want
yeah,
to say the
go
whole
for it.
so me and Erica, we've been referencing my two Instagram posts. But for the gray area,
I'll put that
I
there too.
actually posted. I need to update my link. I don't know. I'll send you the link. I don't know if it's in my bio, but it's essentially I ended up writing a long form Medium article going
Okay.
more into depth. The Instagram swipes is just kind of like little bullet points, but if you wanted more
Right.
details and stuff, I recommend you take a read. It's not that long.
Awesome. I'll put that in there too. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
a read of that as well. Thanks,
Yeah.
Sabriya. Yeah. I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you so much for being a guest. I'm so happy
I'm
we got
so
to do
excited
this.
that you invited me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Here's to part 2 in the future.
I know. I was telling Sabriya earlier that I feel like we have so much more that to talk about and to like discuss about. Like there's so many important things out there that we need to chat. But yeah, so we'll definitely have a part 2 sometime in the future. But
Yes.
yeah.
Happy Black History Month.
Yes. Happy Black History Month. Um thank you, Sabriya. Awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Thank you to
Bye.
everyone listening. Bye.